Well, what can I say? I'm not really too surprised about this. Honestly, are you? Pick any government in the world, and it's probably trying to destroy gaming in some way, shape, or form. And this time, it's the US government.
Riot, Epic Games, and Supercell. What do those things all have in common? Well, they're all either owned or bankrolled by the biggest company in gaming, and that is Tencent. But now they've also got something else in common, and that is that the US government believes they may pose a national security risk thanks to the Tencent connection. And one solution being discussed right now is ripping Tencent out of the US games industry altogether.
This will never happen, by the way. I just want to say that right off the bat. This will never happen, so no one be worried about this. Now, granted, will something minor happen? Yes, I actually did predict that something minor will happen because China. But the US will never actually do anything to truly rip out money flow out of their economy because the stock market goes burr. And this is one of the things that does go burr. Keep in mind, gaming is a bigger industry than, music, movies, and a lot of other things, in fact. Gaming is massive. So the idea that the US would ever actually truly try and remove Tencent's capital from this and weaken their position monetarily, absurd. Absurd. Will they do minor things that we find extremely annoying and frustrating? Yes. That's a firm yes, sadly.
Should that happen? Well, suffice it to say, and as you'll learn in this video, it'll be goddamn messy. Tencent is the biggest gaming company that doesn't produce consoles, and they operate like a true empire. Nearly $140 billion invested across the globe, and that doesn't even include full or near full ownership of Riot Games, Grinding Gear Games, Digital Extremes, Funcom, and Supercell.
Near full ownership, I think they own like 60% of GGG.
But even without control, they still have interests in Larian, Arrowhead, Remedy, Epic Games, From Software, Ubisoft, and many others. Think about
Ubisoft is their biggest disaster out of it. Everything else is doing good.
that for a second. League of Legends, Fortnite, Path of Exile, Clash of Clans, gotta include the mobile gamers, and Helldivers too. Basically, if you've played a major game over the last 5 years, Tencent has probably got money in the company that made that game. That is how deep today's story goes. So, Tencent's money is the backbone of this industry, providing investment in return, hopefully, for some lovely profit. But whenever a company gets that big, their relationship to their investments does change a little bit.
Was it Tencent now? No, it wasn't Tencent who took over last epoch. Midnight Hour Games or whatever they were called. I think it was the people behind Subnautica. That garbage company? Man, Tencent could have put some money into that.
We've already seen how that can go wrong. Take, as an example, Wildlight Entertainment. Tencent have so much invested that they're basically more interested in their wider balance sheet than they are keeping a game like Highguard alive. And the funny thing about Highguard is...
why would they keep something that's gonna... See, this is the problem with financial literacy across the world. You have something that everyone knows, even Bellier has admitted that Highguard is a massive failure, and yet you still have these absolute lukewarm IQ opinions of, well, they should have actually kept it alive because they have a lot of money. They have a lot of money because they don't do stupid decisions like that. That's why they have money. The moment that they start keeping Highguard fucking alive, is the day that Tencent no longer has any money left. It's that simple.
Well, it launched when it had to, not when they ideally would have liked to. So it's one of those things where, had that game have got a bit of a delay and a bit more time in the oven, maybe it wouldn't have had things like crippling performance issues on launch day. But what happened happened. Well,
Lamau, it did not die because of launch day issues, okay? It died because it was a horrible game.
Losing Tencent support was a true death blow to the studio. Now, imagine that happening to every company that wants to operate in the American market because the US government told them to divest. That is the stakes of this story. Now, a thing you might know is just how many Germans watch this channel, and I've loved being in Germany the few times I've been there. I'm planning to go.
That sounds sad.
Are Tencent's interests in gaming a matter of national
Donnie!
security? Should they be required to divest from any company with a large enough American player base? That's the argument that's playing out at the highest levels of the White House, according to the FT's sources. The way they lay it out is that Tencent has investments in Riot, Epic, and other companies like Supercell who have got massive American player bases. And the question is whether data from those players could make its way out
They didn't do anything about TikTok. They're not gonna do anything about this, okay?
of the United States towards China, where the Chinese government or military could use that data. Now, this would be things like your League of Legends match history, your Epic Games account, your Clash of Clans spending habits. Apparently,
Well, if China wants to create robot Roombas with weapons instead of knives attached to them, well, then good luck training your robots on the average League of Legends player's performance, okay? Not a lot of logic to be had.
that's an issue of national security. Though, being a bit more realistic, I would perhaps say that whenever you can, say, use some of the modern AIs and some of the modern techniques to analyze vast quantities of data, then even with a bunch of metadata and a bunch of maybe secondary or tertiary things to the thing that you're actually looking at, well, who knows? Maybe something like League of Legends match history could be important. What if someone in intelligence wanted to establish
Listen, someone who wants to get paid is gonna find a way to call anything that they are gonna be paid for important. This is the reason why every single fucking game that you have has nowadays a in-game inbox where you need to read about the most common updates. This is why WhatsApp now has some kind of fucking inside messenger system that you can't silence that says, "Hey, do you want to read what's new in WhatsApp?" And everyone hates them, okay? These people at the top will find ways to call whatever the hell data they want as important, and then they're gonna mess up. Because the world is smart enough at this stage to know that you can lie with statistics, but people have not caught on that. Honestly, at this point, I think big companies, the next big step that's gonna happen in a lot of giant places is they're gonna establish some kind of bureau, department, a whole department, that would be wild, that literally just looks at the logic behind a lot of decisions and do these statistics actually make sense even if they are true, okay? Because, for example, Microsoft did that shit with AI and diversity and equity and inclusion. They literally said, yeah, this is providing 0 tangible results. And then they hired an Indian to be the CEO. So we're kind of fucked, boys, in the short terms, but you know.
say, pattern of life? Well, if you knew when someone was doing Clash of Clans on their phone or playing League of Legends, that would certainly be useful to you. And one of the FT's sources suggested that Tencent had been trying to negotiate a way to ease these concerns since last summer. But now, there is a meeting in April between President Xi and President Trump. And this meeting is coming after the US president directed the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States
The Billiard say President Xi? It's Xi.
to restrict Chinese investment in specific strategic sectors. They've already been looking at gaming for a long time, and this actually would not be the first games company to be caught up in these fears. So, let's talk about the version of this story that's already happened. Gives us some proof, a bit of a playbook of how this could play out.
No.
When the United States banned TikTok, it was the culmination of years of political maneuvering from both parties, and it was all supposedly driven by fears that US user data was being funneled out of the country to the Chinese government through parent company ByteDance. Now, when that happened, Marvel Snap went offline in the US, and that's because developer Second Dinner's publisher, Newverse, was a ByteDance subsidiary, meaning that Marvel Snap got caught in the crossfire. Now, they quickly found a new publisher for the US to avoid that sort of thing.
Marvel Snap was the second best card game I have played in my life. Sadly, it kind of went to shit as all things.
Happening, and now we're seeing a similar set of concerns playing out with Tencent. Just that they have much more direct involvement in gaming in the USA. Because in the TikTok story, Marvel Snap was just a little bit of collateral damage. But with this story, the games themselves would actually be the main event. So here's how it started off. The Committee on Foreign Investment had been investigating Tencent since the first Trump administration. Their specific fear is this, I'm just going to give you the direct quote. Tencent's investments in Epic and Riot would provide the Chinese company with access to the data of millions of Americans. So that is the concern laid out in their own words. Committee members from the likes of Defense and the Treasury continued to debate this stuff during the Biden administration, and by the end of that, Tencent was placed on a list of companies with connections to the Chinese military, a move that Tencent called a mistake.
Lamau, every single Chinese company, by definition, is an extension of the CCP's governmental hand.
They would say.
And it can be become nationalized at any point.
That and maybe
it technically already is nationalized. I'm not even sure how that works. Is every company in China by definition already nationalized to a degree, considering China can just take ownership of any company in its region?
Them calling it a mistake was a mistake, because it all seems to have lit a fire under the Committee for Foreign Investment in the United States last year. They really got cooking in this one, and now they're debating options for Tencent's future in America. And here's kind of what it could look like. Now, Tencent could keep their investments provided they're committed to certain data protections. And this actually is relevant to you in ways that are not properly discussed a lot of the time. You see, when TikTok was forced into a partnership with US companies, they committed to handling data under national laws. And in practice, it actually meant massive increases in data gathering that was managed by allies of the US government. So you could certainly argue there's also a domestic privacy concern as well. And while we're talking about privacy, well, Tencent has a 10% investment in Discord that's worth $500 million. Your data is already in more hands than you may think. And here's the
Discord thing, by the way, is purely designed for facial tracking purposes. Because the already existent part of the USA is already sleeping with Chinese spies. We literally know this because it's true, because multiple people in high positions of power in the US government have been found to be married, in some cases even, to literal Chinese spies. And nothing got done about that. But this is a very simple thing. China is looking forward to the next generation of people who potentially will matter. Because, all of the politicians at this point in the world are getting really old, and they're going to be replaced by young people. And a lot of people who are currently in high positions of power are also going to be replaced by younger people. And, well, Discord facial recognition, messaging and whatnot, could be really useful to figure out who the CCP needs to target with their future Asian waifu. And there you go. That's kind of it. It's very simple, actually. Diabolical, but very simple and nice.
Uncomfortable part. Neither option really protects you. The data protection route gives the US government a window into these companies that could allow for types of surveillance you may not be comfortable with. That's where I'd recommend you take a look at Anthropic's recent messaging and concerns over mass domestic surveillance. Some people, high up people, have stepped down from OpenAI over similar concerns, so think for domestic US purposes, that's probably something you should be worried about, or at least think about if you're in the US. And even if they were to go the divestment route, that would still just change who holds your information. And either way, the person whose data it actually is does not get a say. Just so we're clear in the rules here. But here's what actually gives this one more teeth. Some within the Foreign Investment Committee believe that gaming companies hold more data than a social media app, and even hold data that is more relevant.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to be messaging my bros on Facebook what kind of actress is my favorite goon material. Okay? That happens that happens in games and on Discord.
These are, quote, financial information, personal details, and information in-game chat logs. So in that case, they could demand Tencent divest from any company that Tencent's currently got a stake in. But for 3 of the companies under scrutiny, there is actually a far larger problem. I'll start with Riot Games. They're wholly owned by Tencent. They're based in the US, so that is about as clear-cut a relationship as it gets. But Tencent only has a 28% stake in Epic Games. Significant, but not controlling. Meanwhile, there's Supercell. Supercell are fully owned, but they're based in Finland. Their US audience is enough for them to be considered a threat, though. So, regardless of operating region and regardless of the magnitude of Tencent's shareholding,
You know what I'm actually interested about? How the hell are they calculating player base from the US, whatever? Is it just the raw amount of IPs that are US based?
if enough of a company's players operate in the US, then it's a potential risk. Now, with that in mind, think about the Tencent global gaming empire that we talked about, and how many game companies could be challenged if they want to keep reaching their US audience. Even just saying those words doesn't feel like it communicates the sheer scale of what that would actually be, but that is the scale of what divestment would actually mean here. So, if we use ByteDance as an example, Tencent could be forced to sell their holdings to someone else. Now, first, that means finding someone to buy them. All those companies that we've talked about may just have to find partners to, fill in the financial holes that just appeared in their balance sheets. That is, of course, a lot of companies that would need to find new partners, often at major scales. So, let's actually put some numbers to this so it feels more tangible. According to Bloomberg, Tencent saw 43.
This is not exactly real, by the way, because Tencent already. This is how investment works in reality. Tencent approaches Epic Games and said, "Hey, buddy, we're gonna give you 10 million to buy Snoop Dogg's soul, and then you're gonna give us back 15 million because of the stuff that Snoop Dogg is gonna give you." And they're like, "Neat, bet, let's go." And then there's also, a bi-yearly payment and whatever. Or maybe it's just stock and equity, who knows. But typically, when you invest in a company like this, you already have the money back, because if the company is successful, it's going to give you the money back for your investment. That's how these things work. And, well, in any case, that's pretty much it. Something's going to happen with this. It's not going to be a big deal. This is not the end of the world. That was Billiard News, 10 out of 10. Bye.